Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. You know we like our scary monsters, and I have a great one for you today. This creature in question is the Skull Lord, featured on page 230 of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, previously appearing in the Monster Manual 5 for 3.5 edition. Those of you who played that version will know exactly what I'm going to say next, and I have to say it. In all good conscience, I could not say it. Forget lore and such things for a second. Just look at the key, most fun features of the Bone Lord from 3.5 edition. Now flip to Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and look at the actions available to the Bone Lord. Where did this cool stuff go? And why is it not there anymore? Those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, let's take this monster and fix it for you. First though, what is a Skull Lord? Well, it's a big skeleton with 3 skulls, dressed suspiciously like a lich. They have a distinctive bone staff with a skull at either end of it. You can encounter them among a number of other undead, many of which they somehow dominate and command. They are rare, and there are conflicting rumours as to where they came from. They can cast spells, and they have some unique powers which are connected to the 3 skulls. The 5th edition version is essentially redesigned to be an undead boss monster that's not quite as powerful as a lich, and is more focused on being a commander of undead, well suited to directing them in battle. So it's a back-of-the-queue monster, boosting their resilience and supporting them with ranged spell attacks and the ability to stay out of harm's way, while also summoning back up some minions out of nowhere. It's logically constructed. It's a niche monster built to serve a specific purpose. However, it really misses the entire point of the Bone Lord, and they just removed the best features of this creature completely. They even got the bone staff wrong. It's made entirely out of bone. It doesn't have any wood bits in it. Ugh, it's a boring monster in 5th edition. So what's a real Skull Lord? Well, let me set up the encounter for you. It begins with the best of intentions. A band of adventurers uncovered a bunch of old books and trinkets in the Shattered Tower in the Anarok Desert. Magical text, too well encrypted for the young adventuring mage to have the time to study, and it's all ritual magic anyway, mostly necromancy. A bit of information she doesn't care to reveal to the party's paladin because it's of little import and it's of no use to her, so it will fetch a fine price when they get back to Thay and sell it to some Thayan magic merchant, which she does. Years later, it finds its way to a collection of an old wizard who has turned to necromancy to extend his own life, again with the best of intentions. He has a promising bunch of apprentice mages, and he needs his wits and vigour in order to better keep up with their training and the underhanded tactics of his rivals. His apprentices are gifted in many ways. One is a skilled duelist, a master of wand and word, who has a reputation for one-on-one wizard-on-wizard combat. No doubt a skill that will serve him well in the politics of Thay. Another is far more secretive, scholarly, and inventive, unknown to the old wizard though, also prone to sneaking into his library and stealing his spellbooks for his own dangerous research. First, it was to study and refine the necromancy that the old master was using to extend his own life, so he was doing it actually for the best of intentions. But infused in one particular book, the book that the adventurer got, was subtle runes of translation. Very useful. Too useful. Using the runes allowed the young wizard to understand the encrypted text and diagrams, as a voice like a high whisper seemed to speak into his mind, revealing the knowledge. Unfortunately, this was too good to be true, and the voice was actually that of the god Merkel, the Reaper, god of death, who most definitely has a much greater, much more sinister agenda. Deeper and deeper the whispering voice took the mage down a dark path, every step offering an easy solution, and life just seemed to keep popping up little problems for those solutions to take care of. Months later, and there is a mysterious crime. The disappearance of 3 young rival mages. The old mage was showing remarkable vitality, and the apprentices were the pride of the local wizarding community, with the duelist on track for a prestigious career. However, things were not good between the apprentices. The duelist was fiery and had sharp and uncompromising opinions about the scholarly apprentice, who had he had a stupid lack of ambition. He wasn't engaging in wizard-on-wizard activity that would propel him through Thayan society. After a ceremony of their peers where they gained their recognition as independent mages, during a grand and loud feast, swimming in good wine, the mages made their toasts, and the duelist, oh so confident in his position and reputation, got to bragging and made the last mistake of his life, by attempting to bully and put down the scholarly mage in front of every other wizard there. What happened next was sudden, dramatic, and horrific. With a word of power, the scholar stunned half the wizards in the room and stood and threw a handful of bones on the floor, and from a cloud of noxious smoke another figure rose up. Those mages who were not stupefied might have recognised some of the possessions of the missing apprentices that disappeared a few months before, draped over the skeletal frame of this 6-foot-tall undead being, who immediately turned and reached out a beckoning hand towards the duelist standing on his podium, who screamed and grabbed at his own face as the very bones of his skull began to fracture and tear themselves out of his flesh, whipping through the air in bloody spatters and bursts. The undead creature opened its mouth, and one of its 3 skulls sucked the bone shards inside. The duelist fell back, and the other mages reached for their wands, orbs, and staves, preparing for combat. But spinning around, the 3-skulled figure spat the shards of bone at them like an assassin's darts. Each grim and howling cold powered winds of howling cold powered the shards across the room, and even caused them to curve through the air and tear into the neck of the duelist, who would soon bleed to death from the savage wounds. As the mages began to die, the creature commanded their bones to tear themselves out of the corpses and assemble themselves, picking up knives and dropping staves to join their new master, who strode over to the couple of torn apart servants and held out its hand again, this time tearing the whole spine and skull free from each and joining them together in the middle with a super cold frozen weld, holding the grisly trophy as one would hold a wizard's quarterstaff. The Skull Lord turned again, this time swinging around slowly to face the maniacally cackling scholar mage, who was overjoyed at the swift and terrible vengeance of his new necromantic powers had brought to bear. He glanced up at the Skull Lord and barked in order to kill every other living person in the building. When the Skull Lord did not do so much as waver, he looked back at it, and slowly comprehension dawned that the head's empty eye sockets began to burn with a baleful blue flame, and the eyes of Merkel looked back at him. Now you can ask, what is this about ripping the bones out of living people? Creating skeletal minions out of corpses? Spitting supernaturally cold bone shards at the enemy? Crafting an intimidating staff of spines, skulls, and ice? I don't see any of that in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Indeed, you don't. There is another change to the Skull Lord in 5th edition, that they have a selection of sorceress spells they can cast, which in 3.5 they had a selection of magical scrolls that they had prepared and tucked away on their person. The scrolls included inflicting wounds, invisibility, melding into stone, wall of fire, and so on, which could of course be looted off them, along with jewellery and a fine metal breastplate. And yes, the reason why they have 3 skulls is because each one is responsible for one of their special powers. That's the reason why they got 3 skulls in the first place. The first head enables them to create undead minions from the bones of the dead. These bone servitors are not limited to just humanoid skeleton warriors either, and using a 12-hour ritual that the Skull Lord can also create a spectral rider, but more on that in a minute. The second skull enables them to spit the freezing bone shards up to 30 feet. These skulls are linked to how many hit points the Skull Lord currently has. If the Skull Lord is down to 1/3 of its hit points, the minion creation skull shatters and it loses that power. Another third of its hit points lost, and the second skull shatters along with its powers to summon and spit bone shards. So the bone summoning power has a range of 30 feet, and the save DC is 19, and it does 2d6 damage. I'd also add a level of exhaustion if the character fails the saving throw by more than 5 points on the roll, representing the loss of some critical bones in their body. It's a brutal attack that is both physically and mentally debilitating. I mean, it's scary as hell. The bone shards can be spat up to 30 feet as an attack action, and one of the Skull Lord's legendary actions as well, if you want it to. If the bones are spat back at the creature that they were ripped out of, they automatically hit like a magic missile, and will even fly past any partial cover or concealment to get them. The shards can also be spat at and absorbed by any of the skeletal servitors of the Skull Lord, or the Skull Lord can absorb the shards itself, healing 5 points in any event, so they can reconstruct the skeletons with them. Skull Lords can't create minions out of thin air. They assemble them from bones, any bones in the area. They can create and control a fairly significant force of servitors that they can include, for example, a bone giant or a bone naga and 4 orc skeletons. They can also while the Skull Lord is at it's got its all 3 skulls, these undead servitors have advantage on their saving throws against turned undead because they're bolstered and powered by this thing, which is a small but significant tactical advantage for the Skull Lord for sure. They generally be back behind the wall of minions and sling spells or tear bones out of living creatures, but they can get into melee combat, and they assemble that bone staff as a bonus action. If no bones are spare and lying around available, they will tear them out of one of their servitors to form the weapon, which strikes as a quarterstaff but has an extra 1d6 cold damage added on top. Skull Lords also know a ritual that can be formed once per month and requires 12 hours and the bones of a horse and its rider. When complete, they create an undead creature called a spectral rider. The spectral riders are fairly powerful undead knights who are incorporeal when they move. They have a defiling attack. They have the ability to shroud themselves in a disguise that makes them appear to be alive. And the Skull Lord can only create one of these creatures at a time. They're actually pretty powerful. They're kind of like blackguards. In the Forgotten Realms, the Battle of Bones is a popular destination for Faerun's necromancers, and it's rumoured that the first Skull Lords were spontaneously spawned in that cursed place from the ambient necrotic energy and the will of Merkel. Today, necromancers who create all sorts of bone undead are drawn to the bleached bone drifts of these lifeless fields. The faithful of Vel-Sharun are rumoured to be creating great forces of servitors who are for their own dark purposes. The Skull Lords are said to hold their infrequent meetings at the Battle of Bones, typically in deepest winter. In the weeks before their unholy assemblies, spectral riders can be seen ranging through the high forest of the Dragonmere, and everyone fears their passage. The purpose of the Skull Lords are inscrutable, though, and their meetings are brief, but it's probably got something to do with Merkel wanting to reacquire the Tablets of Fate or some other attempt to attain greater godhood. There are few skeleton-based creatures, and I need to make some videos about them, such as the Skull Lord's two most common undead servitors, the Bone Spur and the Serpenteur. The Serpenteur looks like if you took two torsos, if you took two skeletons, cut off their legs and extended their spines and then joined the spines in the middle, that's what a Serpenteur is. It's kind of like a double-ended skeleton. And a Bone Spur is basically this large snake-like animal thing. It's an assembly of bones like a bone golem, but just, and it shreds people with like centipede-like, scythe-like bone blades. So they're kind of scary. In a campaign, I would add that I'll put them in there with a twist, and such as adventurers dealing with some sort of undead outbreak threatening to bring ruin to the world, and in the course of hunting down the undead, they discover a group of necromancers stealing bodies, lairing in cemeteries, engaging in profane rites under the cover of darkness. You know, the normal sort of cultist activity. What the player characters don't know is that the necromancers are creating Skull Lords to go out and take command of the undead hordes, and through them end the disaster, while also, of course, acquiring a powerful undead army. So it's kind of for the greater good, but also, creating another problem. So bringing the undead under control, but also giving them too much power. They certainly make for some interesting campaign story elements, some great villains, and also some terrifying combat encounters. I mean, getting your own bones torn out of your body and shot back at you is very memorable, and I'm at a total loss as to why they would think leaving that out completely of the 5th edition Skull Lord is a great idea. It's not a great idea, it's a stupid idea. Just a reminder, if you have not subscribed already, feel free to do so, and be sure to hit that notification bell as I upload from the other side of the world sometime in your future for access to all of the scripts and 1 week advance access to these videos, usually when I'm back home and making videos at my normal pace. Consider becoming a patron of the channel on Patreon for a minimum of just $1 per month. Join the community on our Discord server and the epic pun fight, which is going to be kicking off soon. Come say hi to me, or who's on there fairly frequently, chatting about all sorts of things. And if you want to pick up a new video game at a significant daily discount and help me out in the process, check out the daily deal on Chrono. There's a new game every single day. Also check out the deal for Patron Blades if you want to get a smooth save through an easy subscription service. Use my affiliate link there below and it gives me a little bit of kickback. I can certainly testify to those blades being really good because I use them myself. Linked below in the video description text. As always, thanks for listening everybody. I'll be back with more for you very soon.